Monday Night Rugby on Off the Ball.
With Vodafone, main sponsor of the Irish rugby team. We all belong to the team of us.
Now then, you're welcome along. Very happy to say Rory O'Connor of the Irish Independent here in the studio. You're very welcome.
Thanks, Joe. Good to see you.
Grand Slam winner Gordon Darcy is on the line. Evening.
Good evening, gents. How are you?
Very well. One of those days where there's lots of things going on. So, for instance, news has come through that Kieran Frawley is injured for months, not weeks, which is the last thing he needs. Robbie Henshaw and Joey Carberry out of the Australia match. Andy Friend is going to leave Connacht at the end of the season. We felt that was coming, but it's been confirmed now. And then in terms of the game on Saturday, the likes of Sexton, Ryan, Porter, Van der Fleer, Hugo Keenan, all looking good after knocks. So there have been things going on. You've been updating the Irish Independent website, I would think.
Yeah, pretty much non-stop all day. And Albert Tuisui has been cited as well, which is no surprise after his attempted decapitation on Joey Carberry.
Surprise to Vern Cotter?
Yeah, well, yeah, it'd be interesting to see if they fight it and if they back up Vern Cotter and try and defend them, because I mean it's pretty much indefensible to me, and it's obviously made a very big impact on Joey Carberry's chances. I had a sense that they might play Carberry this week and put Johnny on the bench and bring him on for the last 20 minutes to give him still really the last opening that was there until the World Cup. Maybe Italy away, but I mean Italy are looking pretty good at the moment, so that was a bit of that's a blow. Again, door opens for Jack Crowley, who'll be on the bench. I mean, we think Sexton will be fit, but just by the end of the fact that they haven't called up a third out half, so unless they're going to put Mac Hansen or Mike Lowry on the bench to back up Jack Crowley, which seems very unlikely. So no, it's been an interestingly busy day at the onset of it. Even though Australia are not the greatest team in the world right now, I think this fixture has a bit of magic to it. I think Ireland-Australia always carries weight. I really like it's always a good matchup, and the fact that they're a bit desperate coming into this as well doesn't do it any harm.
And if it lives up to their performance in Paris a couple of weeks ago, then it will be just fine on Saturday evening. Gordon, on Joey Carberry, this is just so unfortunate, and at times his physicality and his size has been questioned at international level, but frankly, if Albert Tuisui comes at your head, it doesn't matter what size you are, you're in big trouble. He has been cited. Vern Cotter afterwards seemed to say with a straight face, was there foul play? What's the question? Is there a head? I don't know.
Yeah, he didn't really cover himself in glory there, so I suppose the lots of positives that he has brought to this Fijian team, you kind of give him with one hand and take it away with two hands when you make kind of lazy comments like that. He hasn't gotten, he's left the field for everyone to see. He's got the shoulder into the head. Very, very no effort to dip at the hips. And Joey Carberry goes back to his thing. At what point do we, the head injury that Joey Carberry has suffered is going to keep him out of the game for a number of weeks. And at what point do we just go, do you just lose a bit of faith with players? It's not hard, just bend at the hips. They're giving you as much. If that had happened as he's bent at the hips and he's done everything he possibly can for a big man to get low and is there, you can maybe take that as a collision with the head, but there's just defending the indefensible, and it's stupid. Vern Cotter, I can't get my head around it, to be honest.
The decision to play Robbie Henshaw, Rory, I think evidently wrong. Don't rush a hamstring.
Yeah, and for this fixture in particular, because this was a week where Ireland had scope to rotate against a team that they were fully expected to beat. He named a very strong team, and I don't think it would have diminished the team, the chances of winning very much by playing Jimmy O'Brien, who played very well at 13 the previous week, or even bringing James Hume in. Clearly there's a message being sent to James Hume and Gavin Coombs, who were both dropped from the squad, that their performance against the All Blacks A wasn't good enough, or the All Blacks 15. But I wasn't in camp last week. I wasn't there for the medical reports about Robbie Henshaw. They had all the information. They trained him. We don't know what level he trained, but you would presume they wouldn't have risked him if they believed there was any chance he was going to pull up after 2 or 3 minutes. But it has, and now he's going to miss the Australia game, which you think he would have been. This would have been a bigger game to be included for, albeit Bundyaki's back this week, so that lessens the blow to some degree as well. It's a worry that it's happened, and it's a worry that they pressed him into service for this game, and they felt like they had to, because They shouldn't need him to beat Fiji because they're, and the performance wasn't particularly good on Saturday. It probably didn't help that they had that disruption behind the scrum, but he's a really important player for Ireland, and you really wanted to be fit for Leinster.
Isn't that why they wanted to get him back? You go through all these things. Like I've just taken back to when myself and Brian went to Poland. We both had hamstring injuries, and we both trained the following week, and I popped mine in training again, and he went on and played 80 minutes, was absolutely fine. The player wants to play. He absolutely wants to play. I know what you're saying. I think there's an unfortunate hindsight bias on this. He wants to play. It's a perfect game for him to play if he's fit. He hits all the markers during the week, and sometimes you're just, it's just brutally unlucky. And actually, obviously, for the player, obviously, it's devastating for him. We are really starting to look at the injury toll lining up for Leinster now and going, okay, with this, they're going to be struggling for a couple of weeks post this series.
Absolutely, yeah, because they're light at 12 with Frawley gone as well, so that's a big risk for them, because they've Racing in a couple of weeks in the first game of the European Cup, and they're not in an easy pool this year, so it is going to it's going to strain them to some degree.
To the game itself, then 35-17, the result bar for the opening minutes was never really in doubt, and even then not much in doubt. Underwhelming, flat, stop start, these are the main adjectives about this one, Gordon. It's interesting, like I must say, watching it, I found it very hard to be overly concerned or in any way disappointed. I do buy into the fact that this is a scratch side. I do buy into the fact that it's hard to get yourself up for a 1 o'clock kickoff for a game that you know you're going to win. And actually the jolt was almost Andy Farrell's post-match interview, where he came on pretty much fuming with the performance.
I wouldn't take any of that. Getting yourself up for a 1 o'clock kickoff, that shouldn't even be in this conversation. You are representing your country. For the majority of those players, this was their opportunity to shine, and most of them were well off the pace.
I understand the theory. I agree with you on the theory. Absolutely, you should be up for a game. I'm just talking about the human reality. I haven't seen a 1 o'clock kickoff where things have really sparked in a very long time. There is a human nature aspect to this where we have to be fair, no? Or do you think it was just that bad?
No, it's like, I think that individually, most players didn't play particularly bad. Just there was no, but I think, and that is a reflection of possibly the gap between, say, the reality that happened against New Zealand second 15 and say our next layer in depth, and a few of these guys were getting an opportunity. So individually, they're able to do okay, but there's no greater sum of the parts. There's nobody on the field was able to generate momentum for the Irish team. The one thing they needed to do was to get over the gain line somehow. Instead, we ended up just kind of running into big Fijians and relying on their indiscipline to get our any sort of territory in the game. And then that's the bit where I said on the field problem solving was missing. And I don't know where that comes from, or where that, without having had spent too long looking at it. I think that was a big criticism for it. The Fijian defence, while it was erratic and chaotic in some places, it was their tackling was very good, and Ireland really struggled to deal with that.
Rory, I am perhaps being too forgiving here.
I think you're right. I think Andy Farrell kind of turned it on its head, because even in the post-match press conference, people were asking him about that 1 o'clock kickoff, and I think what Andy and Gordon have in common is that they played at the elite level for an awful long time, and like Andy Farrell was man of steel twice in rugby league. He's however many professional appearances, and he played for Wigan at all times of the day and didn't let his standards drop. And when he looks at the Ireland dressing room, I think what he sees is the likes of Johnny Sexton, Peter O'Mahony, Keith Earls when he's there, Ian Henderson was another that he name checked. These are players that never let their standards drop below a 7.5 or an 8. And what he's seeing from the next batch in is that they haven't learned that that's part of being an elite level professional across a career. And this is the world's number one team who have beaten the All Blacks 3 times in the last year and are now being compared to the All Blacks. And I think the All Blacks at their best, the Richie McCaw All Blacks from 2011 to 2015, would have hammered Fiji on Saturday. They would have, Ireland spent 8 minutes and 3 seconds in the Fiji 22 on Saturday. you give the All Blacks that level of access. Even now, they're going to come away with a lot more scores than Ireland. And
there's a lot of it not moles being pulled down slowly but surely and illegally.
Up to you to rise above it. You can look. We can come up with all of the excuses, and a lot of them are legitimate. But if you want to be considered, if you want to, like what Farrell's saying is that we need to be better than this. You need to find the solutions on the pitch, and he's not willing to give them the excuses. I like that about him. I thought his post-match stuff was really on point. I think he set a really interesting tone during this window. I think he's been quite unforgiving of any dropping standards. That All Blacks A game was really damaging to a lot of players.
Yeah.
You know, he's cut a few of them. A few of them would have got capped in the second game against Fiji, but he didn't pick them for a reason. He didn't pick them because they hadn't been good enough. He's gone from giving out 11 debuts in 2020, 12 in 2021. He's only given 6 this year, and he's not going to give any this weekend. So like the drawbridge has gone up, and his message to the players is that these guys have earned it. You haven't, and when I've given you the chance, you haven't been good enough. And like there's a ruthlessness there that you have to kind of go, well, this guy's serious about it, and he's doing it. And you know, he was given out on Saturday post match, and he didn't take any of them. And I think he's hoping that message will get through to them ahead of Australia next week.
Yeah, because I sort of think back the last time Ireland played Fiji in 2017, they won by 3 points, and 2018 turned out okay. Your former teammate Gordon Rob Kearney was saying on air afterwards that in some respect things are going so well that deep down they know this isn't a worrying performance, but you almost have to turn this into feeling like a defeat to shock everyone and keep everyone on their toes. There's a touch of deliberate overreaction.
Yeah, like there will be a little bit of this. There's also the comfort in that you know who's coming back in.
Yeah.
So you know Peter Manny's coming back in. You know Andrew Porter's coming back in, and I think that is gonna what Rory is saying is that the next guys, when they have played, they've played with the established players who don't allow standards to drop. When there wasn't somebody there to keep everything going, players started looking around as to go, oh, who's doing this, rather than somebody going, oh, I'm going to do it. And that's what they kind of needed a little bit of at the weekend. Like, you know, Joey Carberry, you know, unfortunately, and Gibson Park weren't able to influence the game. I think the only time we went down the short side was when Tyke Byrne threw a pass down to Gary Ringrose late in the second half. You know, that's your second row who's going to go, let's just change the point of attack here. We've been very, very particular. It would also just show that Ireland are still heavily structured in how they play. And if you don't get quick ball and you can line up defenders or attackers, you can get in among them. I would say there's a few players there that have taken massive backward steps there as well, and reinforcing this notion that the gap between, you know, first team regulars and the next cohort is as big as ever.
I wonder maybe if, Gordon, perhaps some of the frustration on Farrell's part is because this team mightn't be a million miles off a team he'll play in a World Cup pool game, and as you said, the gap was apparent.
Yeah, but I think there's also you can do an awful lot with that. It's not a skill based thing. It's just an attitudinal thing. You know, players looking for work, and I think it's important to remember that this change or evolution of the way they played under Andy Farrell, which, you know, to get this kind of heads up unstructured rugby, a lot of these players won't have a huge amount of exposure to that. So when they get the opportunity, it is probably a shock, and they're still kind of, because there is I think I said this before, there's the psychological safety in not making any mistakes. But if you go to, say, the Jack Crowley thing where he kicked the ball dead, at least he saw the space for the 50-22 and he went for it. But the worst thing would have been if he hadn't seen it. So you're not going to eat players' lunch just for making mistakes, as long as the thought process and everything in behind is right. There just wasn't enough thinking, let alone execution at the weekend. And for me, that was the biggest disappointment. There was nobody really there looking to take the game by the scruff of the hands or the scruff of the neck, and to really just go, okay, let's try and do something a little bit different here.
Yeah. The name I have in my head at all times when Gordon's talking there is the same name you have in your head, Rory, Sexton. So told us about Carberry and Crowley.
Yeah, and I don't think it's a direct it doesn't have to be the 10 who does that. So look, when Johnny retires, the next 10 is not going to be the Johnny Sexton figure. He's not going to be the spiritual leader of the team off the bat, because he's going to have Joey Carberry. We were saying before the game, or before we started, 37 caps. Everyone else only has less than 10, so it's not going to be an obvious transition to that. So there's others who have to step up.
But this team are accustomed to their number 10.
Johnny is the tone setter. He is the standard setter across all levels, and when he's not there, it's not the same. When he went off after 20 minutes in the first test in New Zealand, things went to pot. Like, they were winning that game. They had started unbelievably well. They were in control. Sexton goes off and everything changed. And like, it comes back to Joey Carberry, and it maybe is a little bit unfair on Joey Carberry, and we have a massive expectation of what we want from our 10 as a result. And I thought Joey Carberry was fine on Saturday. I thought he played reasonably well. He did, if you look at his touches, he was tidy enough. He wasn't behind a particularly dominant pack. It was a stop-start game. He was 6 or 7 out of 10, and maybe he needed to be an 8 or a 9. And that's unfortunate on him, because he's always going to be compared to Johnny Sexton. This week it's going to be Jack Crowley in that position, and if Johnny goes off after 10 minutes, we've got a one-cap player leading the team for number 10. Less than 9 games out from the World Cup, and this is the weird scenario that we've been in for, like, I don't know how many times myself and yourself have had a conversation about this very topic, but it is a big concern, because Johnny Sexton, while he is incredibly durable and has an incredible ability to pitch up for test matches, and his mentality is so strong, and it shouldn't be like, we talk about his injury profile a little bit, but really he's been available for nearly all of Ireland's games in the last number of years. It's very impressive. If he goes down, and look at all the players who are getting injuries at the moment, and many of them no fault of their own, there still is that massive question. Like, Carberry's, this is the first game in 16 that Carberry hasn't been or won't be available for Ireland. He started 6 of the last 15. He's come off the bench in the other 9. Before that, he missed 14 in a row. He has amassed a fair bit of experience in this system. He was very good in Paris, in what was a defeat, but I thought he showed up that day, and I think the coaches have a degree of confidence in him. I know New Zealand 2011 is the one everyone looks back to, as well. All the out-halves got injured. It's unlikely that they'll both get injured, but I suppose, how much confidence can we have in a Jack Crowley, a Kieran Frawley, a Jack Carty, Ross Byrne, Billy Burns? They're all the players and Harry Byrne. They've all been tried in this window, and most of them have been cast off. Frawley's gotten injured just when it looked like he was going to be the guy. Crowley's just not going to get enough Ireland minutes between now and the World Cup to be sure, even though he looks very, very good. It's thin. It's very thin, and it's a massive risk factor in this Ireland World Cup project, I think, and that's partly because Sexton's so good, and if they want to beat Australia on Saturday, they have to play him. Not that they can't win with Crowley, but it's a massive ask for a player who's played 18 times for Munster.
Gordon, could you expand on the point you made about Carberry and Gibson Park not quite getting Ireland into some kind of a flow or a touch more unpredictable? What were you seeing that you didn't quite like? What did you want more of from them?
Yeah, it's a very, without any specific examples, I suppose just we weren't able to get into any sort of multi-phase attack that really stressed any of the Fijian defence. Really, we got to really until the last quarter, and I think at that stage the momentum was gone, and Crowley came into a warm seat in a game that was won. And just as you're talking about Carberry, he has been very, very good when he's been sprung from the bench, and has come in and has seen out games and has almost dovetailed with Johnny Sexton exceptionally well. It is a different beast when you start the game, because you actually have to create the tempo. You have to create the environment. You have to create what the feel of the game is like. You've got to understand when you're kicking, when you're running. Why are you kicking? Are you kicking because you want to regather? Are you looking for 50-22s? All this type of tactical nuance that's going through every decision in your head, and it just didn't seem to be there at the weekend. Like, Carberry, and different characters, but at some point you do have to barrel your teammates out of it and drive things. Sometimes you just have to be like an arsehole. Because things aren't being...
That's interesting, right? Because we've had O'Gara followed by Sexton. Like, it's uncanny, it's incredible that one followed the other so closely, and they have a certain temperament, similar temperament.
You're saying they're both arseholes?
Gordon's word, not mine, in the best possible sense. But they have a certain temperament, and I wonder.
I'm just about to get cancelled now, so hopefully it's you two that have got under the bus here.
Listen, we've got our headline. We can wrap this up now if you want. No, we won't do that to you. Don't worry. But I had wondered if, as an Irish rugby watching public, we had almost been seduced by this notion that the number 10 has to be an arsehole of some kind, has to have a certain temperament. And now we look at Joey and we say, oh, it's a temperament problem. But it's really interesting that you feel there, because even Andrew Trimble said it. And I was half wondering, is this like almost old-fashioned type? Are we like the old lads sitting around the table in Moneyball with Brad Pitt? Yeah, go on, expand.
It's not an old-fashioned stereotype.
Yeah.
What it is it's demanding more from players that are not delivering. So, Roy just said Joey Carby was fine. It's not okay for him to be fine in a test match like that, where it's a fulcrum position where everything runs through 9 and 10. You don't get to be fine in matches like that where you start. And Gibson Park was poor as well for large parts of it, and the team, there's a certain responsibility and a certain amount of expectation that comes with those positions, and it is very harsh for me to say that. But you only get the credit when you take the responsibility. So for him, when all the games that go well, you also have to take you've got to step up and take the responsibility when it doesn't click. When Ireland were playing, at what point did they go, oh, do you know what? We're going backwards to go forwards, and they're actually coming forward and knocking 7 colours out of us here. Maybe we need to shorten things up, and we just need to get over the game line, 2 passes outside of the ruck, but we need to get there quicker, and we need to beat them around the corner. Who's thinking like that, and who's driving, and who's in that? I know who does it. Sexton. He does that. I know Peter O'Mahony will have a good feel for things, but who was doing that on the pitch at the weekend? And that's the probably intangible piece that we're missing, that we have when we have our first team guys come together. Now, I do think you can develop that in players. When you're looking at it, say, someone like Max Deegan was impressive when he came off the bench, Caelan Doris. But if you look at the players across the team who stood out, they were the ones that, understand this type of, like, Tig was good. Treadwell was good as an individual, but didn't really get Tig Byrne. Like, Tig Byrne was, I think, absolutely, the second watching was exceptional at the weekend. Like, really excited. Like, we would have really struggled had he not been as well. But Deegan did well when he came on, and Crowley came into a warm seat and just upped the tempo a little bit. And that kind of changes, and it puts a nice gloss on the outcome. But the underperformance as a collective is massive.
It's really interesting to get that perspective. A final word on that issue at 10, Rory, and the temperament question.
Yeah, it's interesting listening to Gordon a bit. The one player I think who closest mirrors Johnny in terms of his on-field persona is Ross Byrne. And you see sometimes during the Leinster warm-up, if you get to the game early, you can hear him. Like, he's really vocal, and he's not afraid to tell the players this what he expects. And I guess he's grown up under Sexton. He's probably the one who's worked under Sexton for the longest. Carberry did it for a while, but it does seem like a very different kind of character. But they obviously don't think, Andy Farrell doesn't trust Ross Byrne at that level to run the game for him, whereas Leinster do. And that's one of the critical probably failures in the Irish system, is that Leinster and Ireland view Ross Byrne so differently. And I'm not saying that Ross Byrne is the answer, because in fairness, the times he has been given a chance, which have been infrequent and kind of unfortunately timed sometimes, like the World Cup warm-up in France or in London when he got thrown in after 3 days preparation to try and take on a rampant England team. I'm not saying he's the answer, and we don't know enough about Crowley yet because he's only played 18 times for Munster, but he looks like he has some of the elements. I mean, you see him sometimes hitting a ruck in the way that Sexton would. He's not afraid to get stuck in, but it's very early in his development, and I'm not going to heap more pressure on him. But I think part of the problem is that you touched on it earlier. Johnny Sexton emerged just as O'Gara was starting to come to the end, and it was an imperfect transition because they were together for a while, and it was obviously tense and all that went with that. But really, I mean, Carberry talked before the 2019 World Cup. He spoke to the New Zealand Herald and said, "I want to take Johnny's jersey at the World Cup." We haven't seen that from him. We haven't seen him go out and dominate a season. I think a lot of us still go back to that Gloucester game, which is 3 or 4 years ago now.
January 19.
Yeah, so I mean that's a long time ago as a reference point. Paris was good, but I just think we have this issue that Sexton, when he's fit, is so important. And it's going to be the issue until he retires, because unless Crowley goes off and wins Munster or European Cup, which is looking unlikely at this stage, and takes Carberry's jersey at Munster, he has to be ruthless and take Carberry's jersey at Munster if he wants to be the man. Because if Carberry's starting for Munster, we're looking at the same pecking order for the next while.
Yeah, well, we'll move on.
But it's also very relevant as well. It's not. This is not a unique problem in Ireland. It's pretty much across the world. Look at the different entity that. Scotland are when Finn Russell's placed. There isn't a 10 in Scotland that can get close to him, but they don't. They have a different problem. They don't want to play him. And you look at England. England can't figure out on where to play in the 10. Like, it's such an important position. And where Ireland we have been spoiled by him, but we've also been we're completely addicted and dependent on it. But at some point you're going to go, if the road is going to run out. But listen, there will be a natural successor. What will be interesting to see is when Crowley and Carberry are both fit back in Munster. If he plays this weekend and has 20 minutes and continues a kind of a similar impact that he had against, because that would be well within the realms of possibilities that 15, 20 minutes to go, he's got to see out a game. Who starts for Munster when both of these guys are fit now?
I think it's still Carberry right now, but I think that picture is changing. I think it's the same with Murray and Casey as well. I think there's Munster's season and the way it's gone is forcing some of these decisions, and the coaching ticket do seem more open to making less conservative decisions than their predecessors. So that's going to be one to watch, all right.
Well, it was interesting. Simon Easterby during the week was noting the fact that Crowley's had an unusual path to playing for Ireland. Hasn't had much game time, hasn't had months of brilliant performances where people have been calling for him, but he said he's done enough, he said, to make us go, wow, this guy's got something. Yeah. Which was quite a notable
which they've done with Jameson Gibson Park. Ireland have changed the pecking order at Leinster with a number of players. So and Ulster as well. Kieran Treadwell is not really starting for Ulster, where he's getting in for Ireland. So Farrell's been very good in that way of picking out a guy that he likes, and the provinces generally follow through at the end.
Can I do a stock take with you for a second, Rory? So Alan Quinlan was on AM this morning and he said, based on the RDS, based on Fiji, certainly nobody's forced themselves into the Irish 15.
Yeah.
And yet it does seem behind that front line there's been a real shuffling of the pack in various quarters. So off the top of my head, just jotted down before you came in, Jimmy O'Brien suddenly ahead of Lowry and Stockdale. Yeah. Stockdale didn't have a great night at the RDS either, and Lowry can say he's done nothing wrong, but Jimmy O'Brien's just had a great November. Yeah. You mentioned James Hume being it's copper fastened where he is in the pecking order. As Max Deegan's stock has risen, Gavin Coombs has fallen. Yeah. We have Nick Timoney, Stuart McCluskey, who can feel very good about things. Jeremy Lockman, Andy Farrell said his scrummaging has improved no end in the last 6 months. You mentioned Treadwell as well. So whilst the 15 remains almost untouched, it's been significant November, no?
There's a lot of moving parts, and also Ireland's attack hasn't necessarily clicked over the course of any of the games, really. There was moments against South Africa, and there's I want to see them click on Saturday, or else maybe there's a bit of a trend there that other teams are maybe having because they're probably the most analysed team in World Rugby right now after what they did in the summer. So this maybe has been an important window that if teams are figuring it out a little bit, then they need to adjust ahead of the Six Nations. So there's no harm in that. But when the Six Nations squad is picked, I think the pecking order as we understood it a lot in this year's Six Nations, I think it will be very, very different come the spring. And a couple of players like the Emerging Ireland Tour, the A Games last summer, that RDS fixture that you referenced, they've all been significant. But it is a lot of moving parts below the surface. The surface is remaining pretty solid, and you're only 9 games from World Cup. That's a good thing. That's core stability and cohesion. And that the fact that the starting team plays very well together and is very hard to get into is not a bad thing. You would like a couple of players to be really, really pushing and taking these opportunities and starring against Fiji. Timoney, I suppose, did get the 2 tries and did play quite well. But you're still saying Josh van der Veer's come into the team on Saturday. There's no real debate about that if he's fit. So there's a lot of moving parts beneath the surface, but the surface is pretty calm and pretty steady, and we know what we have going into next year.
Yeah, that your read on it, Gordon?
Yeah, I fairly echo a lot of that. That there is a bit of moving in and around, but a lot of players will go back and they will play well for their provinces, and you expect Hume and Ballacune to go home back to Ulster and probably rediscover a little bit of form. Ballacune's probably banging his head off the table in that he's got 2 games and the ball has barely come to him. Had he played any of the previous 10 matches, he couldn't have played with more ball. So sometimes the games just haven't fallen for you. I think there is definitely a natural order picking up, and I wouldn't be surprised to see 1 or 2 surprises on the bench this weekend. In that players, because what has been evident is when players do make the coaches sit up and have a little look, that they have rewarded them. Crowley has been, has been fast tracked off very little evidence. So they're obviously seeing something. I wouldn't be throw a complete left hook in there. I wouldn't be surprised to see if Deegan possibly gets a shot in at the bench this weekend. Has been very good in pretty much most games he's played, and he offers something of very different as an impact player off the bench. So I wonder, will they start looking at those that next layer down and trying to get them game time through the bench, because that's an easier way to get them and potentially a less risky way of getting them game time. Casey, for argument's sake, he was lively when he came on, but Casey is potentially one of those guys who's in the bracket of has all the potential but doesn't have a great body of work to show for it just yet. He really needs to capitalize. Sorry, it's not meant to sound as Machiavellian as it is, but he needs to capitalize on Murray's injury and nail down the number 1 slot. And if he can't do that, then you got to question, is he that good?
Just last point, I know you got to run off, Gordon. Small sample size. It was half mentioned after the game at the RDS, but with the proviso that Ireland were beaten up front, so you can't read too much into it either. And it was a scratch side and not Ireland's first team. But there was a sense maybe that New Zealand had really, as Rudd had referenced, looked at the tape from the summer and had found a few very significant ways to upset the Irish attack. Are you seeing any signs of that, be it the RDS or be it what Fiji tried to do or be it what South Africa tried to do, that there is a degree of Ireland being really looked at? What
kept Fiji in the hunt and what really stifled Ireland's attack was just their one-off tackling. It was pretty impressive, to be honest, and legal up until that crackpot stuck his head into Joey Carberry. The defence was clearly beginning to creak. I suppose the question I would have posed post that Fijian game is, if they had defended our maul, where were we going to score? And I don't think there was an answer for that.
Right.
And that's the bit was probably going, whoa, right. Okay, where do we go from here? And, the 10-minute blitz we had against South Africa, got our tries, worthy winners, but again, just that lingering doubt. And it's not to be a complete naysayer. Like we beat a really, really big South African team that just basically pummeled us on the rope, and we counterpunched twice, got some tries, and won out. But if there was 6 or 7 minutes left in that game, who would you have backed to score next? We were running on fumes at that stage, and they had picked 2 donkeys at halfbacks. So we are the number 1 ranked team in the world, and teams are coming for us. Australia are coming for us this weekend, and Australia were very, very good against France. And this is going to be a really, really hard test match for Ireland to win this weekend.
Okay. Well, that's kind of interesting. So we'll be looking out for the Irish attack.
We can win it though. We just have to play with double down on the quick tempo. So if Ireland play and they are able to get that tempo game, they absolutely can win. But I just think it is important to recognise, I think Rory alluded to it as well, that these guys they're not a bad Australian team, and they're coming in under the radar.
Okay. You've been very good with your time. There's always the danger here you're just going to say a flat no, and that's never a great moment on the radio. But was there anything else about Ireland over the last week or so that struck you or that you wanted to mention?
I don't think so. I think we kind of covered a fair bit there.
It was inevitable that would happen.
Would you go McCluskey or Aki at the weekend, Gordon?
Which?
Would you go McCluskey or Aki at the weekend?
I have a very strong sense it'll be Bundy.
Interesting. That's a big
Very
call.
good. Thank you very much for the time. We appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
Cheers.
Right, good to see you. Nice show.
Gordon Darcy with us there on the line. Our Rugby and Off the Ball is with Vodafone, main sponsor of the Irish Rugby team. We all belong to the team of us. We're going to take a very short break. There are quite a few things I want to hit Rory O'Connor with after the break. Back in 1 sec.
Monday Night Rugby on Off the Ball.
With Vodafone, main sponsor of the Irish Rugby team. We all belong to the team of us.
Monday Night Rugby on Off the Ball.
With Vodafone, main sponsor of the Irish Rugby team. We all belong to the team of us.
Now then, you're very welcome along. So, competition time. Rory O'Connor has stayed with us of the Irish Independent. Thanks again to Gordon Darcy, who came on late notice, gave up his time. The Autumn Nation Series continues, obviously, Australia against Ireland on Saturday. We have pair tickets for the Australian game, as well as 2 Ireland jerseys, all with thanks to our rugby partner Vodafone, main sponsor of the Irish Rugby team. To get your name in the draw, just identify tonight's mystery voice. Asked if he regrets spending the whole weekend watching seasons 5 of The Crown instead of prepping for New Zealand next week.
I don't regret anything, mate. I don't regret anything. Why would I regret it?
To enter, text your answer along with your name to 53106, hashtag Team of Us. You've just shown me your phone, which is breaking news, is it?
Yeah, so Johnny Sexton and Josh van der Fleer have been nominated for the World Rugby Men's Player of the Year, to be handed out next Sunday after the Australia game. I believe there's a private jet or a charter leaving Dublin and stopping off in several locations in Europe on their way to Monaco. They're up against Lucanio Am and Antoine Dupont, who's the reigning World Player of the Year, I believe. His red card at the weekend might do something to diminish his chances. I would say Van der Fleer is going to get it.
Really?
Andy Farrell was nominated for Coach of the Year earlier. I would think Wayne Smith will get that on the back of winning the World Cup for New Zealand on Saturday. And Mark Hansen and Dan Sheehan were both nominated for Breakthrough Player of the Year. Terry Kennedy and Amy Lee Murphy-Crowe were nominated for the Sevens Players of the Year. They've a decent shout as well. They've had some good years, but I don't see Farrell winning. I think Smith wins that.
Yeah.
Breakthrough Player, maybe one of the Irish guys gets that, and I think Van der Fleer's got a real chance. Certainly, talking to English colleagues, I hadn't appreciated how they were the first one to plant a seed a couple of months ago when I was over there, and they were all saying, God, yeah, Van der Fleer's going to get World Player of the Year this year. And as Peter rightly pointed out in yesterday's Sunday Times, he's not even on a central contract.
Is he not?
No, he's on a Leinster contract. Yeah, there's 13 players in a central contract, and Josh van der Fleer, the reigning Rugby Writers, Players and European Player of the Year and a nominee for the World Rugby Player of the Year, is on a Leinster deal that he only signed last year. He's on a 2-year Leinster deal. It's not, I don't think it's a bad Leinster deal, but he's not one of the top boys, no.
That is bizarre,
isn't it? It's part of the way they structure it, and you know they need to spread them around the provinces, because really it gives Leinster an incredible financial advantage to have 10 players off the books. If essentially they can go out and spend loads of money on a foreign player, then so that's why, you know, say a Murray, O'Mahony and Earls are getting Munster ones central contracts at Munster, when maybe, you know, Gibson Park doesn't have one either, but he gets picked ahead of Murray, who does. So there's a bit of an anachronism there, but it's a quirk of the Irish system.
That is a big quirk. Wow.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
funny.
He's had an incredible year, though.
That would put him in such rarefied atmosphere. So he just joins Keith Wood and Sexton, end of. I mean, O'Driscoll can definitely feel aggrieved at 09 in particular, but that is
if he gets it, yeah. I mean, we got to caveat it, but if you think Lucanio Am is missing at the moment, so he's missing a kind of real window to impress the judges before.
Do you not think the votes are in at this stage? No.
I think they convene this week. I think that they try and do it as late as possible. Okay. It's a committee. Yeah, if you've got Brian, I think Brian's on the committee, isn't he? Brian Driscoll. Certainly Fiona Coughlin is.
That's one vote for Sexton.
Yeah, absolutely.
I would have thought, as amazing as Van der Fleer is, Sexton, I guess he missed a portion of the Six Nations, but he's been remarkable.
No, he has. He's certainly, like, I don't think the Grand Slam, I presume they're going to spread the love a little bit. It hasn't been one dominant team necessarily all year, but Ireland have been really consistently excellent, and I think that South Africa game, and like Van der Fleer was man of the match that day, wasn't he? Or was it Doris?
Van der Fleer, but I mean,
like he's been man of the match nearly every.
Always get man of the match.
You need to talk to someone first about that.
Back row Alan Quinlan gave back row.
I know. Donald Lenihan's prone to doing it as well. They do show up well in the stats, and in fairness, like Van der Fleer has been consistently brilliant.
Yes. I don't know why
year.
I'm talking Sexton up and Van der Fleer.
No, which Irish players should get World Player of the Year? It's a good debate to have.
Yeah.
I could be completely wrong, and Am could get it. In fairness, he's been absolutely superb for South Africa this year. Dupont, I'm not sure. I think last year was so magic for him, and to give it to the same player 2 years in a row would be a big thing. Maybe he's earned it. I don't know.
Six Nations champions.
Grand Slam as well. First French Grand Slam in a long time. It's in Monaco. World Cup next year, but it's going to be. Yeah, I think. I think Van der Fleer would be a worthy recipient. Sorry, Sexton would as well. Sexton's had a magnificent year. To win it at 37.
See, I just think
he's been nominated at 37. I know he probably thinks we're all obsessed with his age, but what he's doing is phenomenal. It's really remarkable, and that's even to go back to not to go hog it, but like the fact that I think the closer we get to the World Cup, the less concerned we are about his age, because he's proven it. He's able to do it at 37. You kind of, I know the NFL, the quarterbacks have kind of dropped off recently, but that you think he's probably going to be able to get there now. That concern is diminishing all the time. It's going to be a once-off incident that rules him out, if it is anything at all. It
would be an interesting exercise to go back to this studio and the various people who were in across the week that Sexton publicly said, I plan to be around for the next World Cup. Like, there was scoffing. It was just like laughter.
I think I said he was going to retire after the next. I think after that Fiji game in 2018, I said Sexton was going to retire at the World Cup in 2019.
Yeah.
And I know I've been consistently wrong with Sexton over the years. And yet you keep asking me back.
Indeed. See, well, we'll see.
It's not even on. You just
I would have thought there would be a degree of what he's doing is extraordinary. The longevity, almost like a rubber stamping of his greatness, flowing of votes towards Sexton. But who knows?
It will be quite something. I'm not sure he's been as dominant as he was in 18, but I mean, the fact that he's got the nod for the nomination is big. Now, whether the Irish vote is split, I don't know how these things work necessarily, but it's a great achievement, and it's a mark of both. Even if they don't win it, it's Farrell as well. It's just a reminder. Like, we've been quite critical of Ireland today, but it's from very much a position of, we think they are one of the best teams in the world, so it's disappointing when they slip. It's not a. It's an incredibly good place to be in. It's kind of nipping around the edges of an incredibly strong organisation.
Yeah. On the Matt Hansen-Danshin for Breakthrough Player of the Year, I do think it has to go to Capozzo of Italy. It's just too amazing. The 2 tries against Scotland on his debut. He sets up the match-winning try against Wales. 2 brilliant tries in the win against Australia. And I do remember vividly when he came on against Scotland, the sense was, this is an all-time low for Italy that someone this size and this young looking is in the team. Like, we almost need to do a piece on the medical aspect, the safety aspect of this guy playing, and then he scored 2 tries.
Yeah.
So I think he deservedly maybe is the breakthrough player.
And I think we've known that Italy have had good young players over the last number of years. They've had very good results on their 20s level. There's been something building there beneath a crumbling facade, and amidst the debate around kind of relegation and all those sort of things, you're kind of going, when is this going to actually materialise? We know that they've got, and it took Garbisi has been a big he didn't play on Saturday, but he's been a big factor in it. But maybe Capuzzo just coming in and with that freshness and that fearlessness has just helped change that mindset, and they're on a very good run at the moment.
Which is great for the Six Nations.
Yeah, it is. It's great for rugby. It's great for even for these Autumn Nations games, like for Italy and Australia, a much changed Australia, but for that to be a proper game when you're selling the package, Amazon have all the games at the moment. They need all the games to be good. Even Fiji being pretty competitive against Ireland is they didn't do it in a very pretty way apart from the 2 tries. It is the more good teams there are. It's a very simple thing, but the more good teams, it means more good games, the better the product. So it is good. I mean, it makes this weekend very interesting because it puts the Australians firmly on the back foot, but it's great.
I'm not overly worried about the fortunes of Amazon, I have to say, as they lay off 10,000 people, spend all this stupid money. France 30, South Africa 26 was, I know you didn't get to see this in full, but it was an amazing test match. Emphasis on that test match physicality, as you might imagine. Steph du Toit sent off early on by driving his head into Dante, I think it was, and then Dupont tackled Colby in the air in the second half and he was sent off. You did think when South Africa first went down to 14 they were in big trouble, but they just hung in and hung on and hung in, and then it was a really close run thing and France got over the line. I did find myself watching the game remembering vividly the French counter-rucking from Ireland's trip to Paris in the Six Nations. They are just awesome in that department. Even South Africa looked lightweight at times.
Well, I think they are one of the teams that can so South Africa, one of the reasons I think South Africa are finding another way and trying to play with a more expansive style is because I don't think they can beat France playing the way they play, because they're one of the teams that have a strong enough scrum and big enough men to withstand everything South Africa can throw at them. I mean, Ireland showed that they can as well. Now, it took something pretty remarkable defensively, but France...
more repeatable
France have
in a French way.
the athletic profile. It's a word. It's a phrase I don't like coming back to because it makes it sound quite scientific as sport, and I prefer sport to be more romantic. But I think sometimes the cattle that you're able to put out onto the pitch and the size of men, one of whom is a South African second row, Willemse, he just has he has the size to be able to live in that company, and they they have depth. They have a league that's by far and away the deepest in the world. They have changed their rules so there's more French qualified players playing in it. They have full stadia. They're able to take a test match to Marseille and it looks even better than Paris, which has been remarkable in the last while. There's something special happening in French rugby at the moment, and to withstand what South Africa threw at them in a physical test match and win relatively young. They're a pragmatic team for all that they have wonderful attacking talent and can pull a game out of the bag like against Australia. They're quite
but even against Australia,
ruthless.
their tries were more forward oriented. Australia going the length of the pitch,
but they do have that South Africa. Similar to the South Africans, they have a wonderful back three and a brilliant number 9 who can just make something happen from nowhere as well when he's on the pitch. So they're looking incredibly good. I know Ireland are world number 1. It's interesting. I was at the Australian press conference today, and it's firmly the line from them is that Ireland are number 1 and they're the best team in the world, but France are not far off them. So it's that Six Nations game in Dublin is shaping up very, very nicely. I hope I don't want it to be repeated at the World Cup next year. I think you'd take New Zealand over them at the moment if you get there.
Yeah, and with that in mind, we'll skirt by Scotland 23, New Zealand 31. Scotland led for a good portion of this game, and New Zealand eventually got their act together. But it was error-strewn New Zealand. There was nothing awesome about it.
No, not at all. And there have been signs of life in New Zealand since the transition with the coaches and since their low points, although they keep throwing in a performance like this here and there. I mean, they were poor against Japan. They've lost to Argentina. Australia would have beaten them, but for I err on the side of Bernard Foley not kicking the ball out quickly enough, and they should have lost on Saturday. A better team than Scotland would have beaten them, and really Scotland played very, very well. They tightened up and they did everything you're not supposed to do when you're ahead against New Zealand.
We'll come back to that. So I did want to mention the World Cup final because it was genuinely phenomenal, extraordinary game. So New Zealand are world champions again. They beat England 34-31 at Eden Park in front of 42,500 screaming fans. England went into this World Cup on a 30-game winning streak. They had hammered New Zealand twice last year in 2021 to the point that New Zealand introduced professionalism in early 22, brought in Wayne Smith to try and salvage the situation. As for the game itself, England were down to 14 from the 18th minute. Lydia Thompson a red for a high tackle, and yet they still led for most of the game. They were down to 14. They were away from home. I dare say they feel if we were to play New Zealand 10 times on a neutral venue, we'd come out on top. But this is the magic of a World Cup. The best team don't always win. And then the scenes were extraordinary. So all told, this World Cup hasn't pierced the bandwagon consciousness of rugby fans in this country because Ireland aren't there.
Yeah, and the kickoff times.
And the kickoff times.
And it was on ITV, which... So I have Sky, and I have to go through extraordinary lengths to actually put on ITV. So it was being streamed on the World Rugby website, but that didn't help in terms of the game was on RT on Saturday, and that helped. You were able to just turn on your TV and it was on. The bits that I've seen have been very good.
This one might have grabbed. The final might have grabbed.
I did. I was certainly from I follow a lot of rugby people on social media. I had watched some of the games, the kind of later games on a Saturday morning across the kind of knockouts anyway, and they were very, very good. But I wasn't seeing much about them beyond the English people I follow who are covering England, but the final did, and it just showed what potential is there for women's rugby. When it's played well, it's ridiculously good sport. You get much higher ball and play time than you do in the men's game. The tries that New Zealand scored were extraordinary. England played incredibly well with 14 players for so long. New Zealand probably should have finished the game with 14 players as well. There was two very controversial decisions thrown into it all as well. And if Simon Middleton, their coach, was of the similar mind to Rassie Erasmus, he could compile a fairly impactful video of all the things that the referees at Holly Davidson got wrong. But it came down to that final line out, and for New Zealand to throw up a jumper 5 metres from their own line in the red zone. Now England had a very dominant maul, and if they caught the ball they probably would have either scored or got a penalty try, but it was an incredibly brave call they won it. They got the ball off the pitch and the place just erupted. And I don't think they're the best team in the world, but that doesn't matter in a World Cup final,
World
you
Cup,
know.
yeah.
It was a far more impressive World Cup win than their last World Cup win at Eden Park when the men kind of fell over the line against France. The tries they scored were just so worthy of winning a big game. And to see a team play with such... it wasn't abandon, it was intent, and it was accuracy, and it was bravery. It was attacking bravery in a final. I know they were playing against 14 players, so they were trying to find the width. They found it, and it was breathtaking. It was such a good game of rugby.
Clock is so against us here. We might come back in future weeks if it's okay to Andy Friend's departure at Connacht and what it means for the province. But Rory O'Connor of the Irish Independent, many thanks. It was great. We will leave you with Black Fern's wing. You've probably seen this on social media, but if you haven't, Ruby Tui. This is how you do an interview after you've won a World Cup, I think. And so in the end, she realised she didn't want to talk as much to the interviewer. She just wanted to interact with the crowd. So she had come over from Rugby League, an Olympic gold medalist there, superstar. And her interview with the interviewer and the crowd afterwards kind of caught the magic at the moment. So we'll leave you with that.
I'm just so proud to be a New Zealander right now. They said nobody cared about women's rugby. Well, guess what? We out here. We out here, fam. We're going nowhere. New Zealand, catch a bit here, quick. How are you? For reals, nā mihi tuatai o te hau kāinga o te tamaki makaurau. Thank you for letting us be here, have our presence here. They said we couldn't do it, Kirst. They said we wouldn't. We did it, and honestly, it took all of us. Anybody out there defended in England more before? It ain't easy on the last minute, baby. But we all did it together. New Zealand was a part of that, and I'm so proud to be here right now.
Thank you so much, Ruby. Thank you for choosing this Black Ferns team over the Sevens this year. Thank you for everything you've done for this sport in this country.
It wasn't easy making the decision. Got bloody shafted from Sevens, but here we are in 15s. New Zealand, tu te ra mai na iwi, tātou tātou e, tu te ra mai na iwi, tātou tātou e, pai up, mate, tahi tahi, tahi ra, love you baby.
Monday Night Rugby on Off the Ball.
With Vodafone, main sponsor of the Irish rugby team. We all belong to the team of us.